Harry began the day under the scorching heat of the savannah. The air was heavy, with no wind at all. He raised his canteen to his mouth. The water had already warmed, but he had no other choice. He lifted the rifle on his shoulder and scanned the area. Everything was quiet, until he heard that scream spreading across the savannah. It was not a troop warning or an alarm call. It was the sound of an animal living its final moments. He immediately turned his rifle toward the source of the sound. A thick, muscular African python had caught a baby baboon that had been left alone. The troop was nowhere to be seen. Even the mother was gone. The baby was no more than 3 months old, and its entire body was lost within the coils of the python. Harry instinctively grabbed his rifle, then immediately hesitated. He normally never interfered. The rules of the savannah were clear and ruthless. The strong survived. But what he saw through his binoculars pierced his heart. The baby baboon's face was tense. Its mouth hung open. Its breathing was irregular. This was not panic. This was pure pain. The python tightened its body a little more. Muffled sounds began to come from the baby. Harry turned his head. "The cruel rules of nature," he said. At that moment, something burst out of the bushes. The mother baboon. She was running toward the python, screaming, without a moment of thought. She began attacking the python with her claws, continuing to circle her baby and scream as she struck. The python reflexively tightened itself even more. The baby was now motionless. The python flung the mother baboon to the ground, but she immediately got back up and kept attacking. At that moment, 2 more female baboons appeared from the troop and rushed toward the python. They threw branches, screamed, and tried to distract it. But the python was so stubborn that it was determined not to release the baby. The python was large and patient. Harry was not going to intervene, because this was the balance of nature. But when he turned back one last time, the scene was already right in front of his eyes. He saw the desperation on the mother baboon's face. This was not just instinct. It was a decision to never give up. Something changed inside him at that moment. Just this once, he could interfere with the balance of nature. Harry started running with the rifle on his shoulder. He was determined not to use it. He could feel the heat in every cell of his body. The bushes tore at his legs as he ran. The distance was a bit far. He had forgotten about the vehicle, but there was no turning back now because time was working against them. Maybe only minutes remained. The python was still very determined not to release its prey. It threw the mother baboon aside once more, but she did not give up, turned back, and attacked again. Harry kept running. He could hear his heartbeat clearly. At that moment, an invisible line was crossed in the savannah. The line between watching and intervening. And the moment Harry crossed that line, this story was no longer just nature's story. It was his as well. Harry was now at the scene. The African python was still holding the baboon, but it had begun to loosen. The snake had been affected by the attack and had realized that what was approaching was a human. The mother baboon continued her attacks, but she was extremely exhausted. The python stubbornly held on to the baby, yet it was no longer able to maintain the pressure. It lifted its head and tasted the air of the savannah. The scent of death felt unfamiliar even to the python. The risk was increasing. The prey was no longer breathing, and the small body was motionless. This was not a familiar situation even for the python. In its experience, shaped by many years, this meant it could be the end for itself. It slowly loosened its coils and, like a heavy bow unbending, slid away into the bushes and disappeared. Silence fell. The mother baboon laid her baby on the ground. The baby did not move. Its chest was barely rising and falling. There were deep red marks around its neck and chest. The pressure had left its trace. There were wounds along its ribs. The mother baboon did not know what to do. When she lifted her head, she locked eyes with Harry. She made no attempt to attack. She slowly took 2 steps forward. Then she hesitated. She grabbed at his pant leg and pointed to her baby, then lowered her head. This was not a threat. It was a desperate mother begging for help. Harry slowly lowered his rifle to the ground. He knelt beside the baby. He was afraid of making any sudden movements. He began to examine the baby. Its tongue had turned purple. Its lips were dry. Its breathing was irregular. The pressure had damaged its lungs, making each breath shallow. Immediate intervention is required, he thought. They had no time to lose. Every second was working against them. Harry stood up and picked up his rifle from the ground. The mother baboon watched him with curious eyes. The troop began to grow, but this was not a threat to Harry. The females of the troop had formed a protective circle around the baby. Harry quickly started running back in the direction he had come from. The vehicle was behind the rocks where he had arrived earlier. As Harry sped up, the savannah, burning like hot asphalt, strained his lungs, but he would not stop. A life was at stake. The moment he got into the vehicle, he accelerated straight back to the scene. When he arrived, the baboons were startled by the sound of the engine, but when Harry stepped out, they calmed again. Harry grabbed the first aid kit from the vehicle. Gloves, bandages, an oxygen mask, a cold spray. He took everything and hurried back. The mother baboon was waiting by her baby with that expression of pain. There was still no increase in signs of life from the baby. Harry put on the gloves and checked the baby's chest again. The breathing was irregular, but it was there. He carefully massaged around the neck where the pressure had been, applying the cold spray at short intervals to help the muscles relax. He brought the mask close to its face, trying to keep the airway open. The mother baboon leaned in closer, watching Harry's hands. Her breathing quickened. For a moment, she pulled back, then moved close again. Harry wrapped the bandage loosely. The goal was to stabilize, not to tighten. He watched the movement of the ribs closely. Minutes passed heavily. Do you think Harry did the right thing? You can share your thoughts in the comments. 1 hour later, the baby's breathing returned to normal. After seeing the baby breathe regularly, Harry finally took a deep breath as well. The mother baboon carefully gathered her injured baby and moved toward the shaded grove where the troop was standing. Her steps were extremely cautious. From time to time, she paused, as if listening to her baby's breathing. Harry remained where he was, watching the mother baboon. The females of the troop provided protection for the mother and the baby. They surrounded the baby, taking it into the center. The sun's intensity had eased slightly. The heat was still present, but the shade now allowed them to breathe. Harry watched the baby carefully. Danger could return at any moment. He looked at the baby through his binoculars. The breathing had improved. It was weak, but steady. The mother baboon looked one last time in Harry's direction. It was a look of gratitude. She was now certain they were safe. Harry began walking toward the vehicle. Today had been important for him, because in his 15 years of life in the savannah, it was one of the rare moments he had intervened. He had broken the rules, but his heart was at peace. He vowed to protect that peace always. Do you think Harry did the right thing? You can share your thoughts and like the video.